He was nuts. Chris Waddle, the former England winger turned pundit, has spent years making wild statements about some of football's biggest names. His opinions have sparked outrage across social media and in dressing rooms around the world. But what happens when you go too far with your opinions? Today, we're looking at 5 football legends who found themselves on the wrong end of Waddle's harsh words, and why his brutal takes have made him one of the most controversial voices in football. Some people love his honesty, while others think he's completely lost the plot. Before we dive into the drama, let's set the scene. Chris Waddle had a pretty good playing career. He played for England over 60 times and became the 3rd most expensive player in the world when he moved to France in 1989. At Marseille, they called him Magic Chris because of his fancy footwork and creative style. He played alongside some of the best players in Europe and won league titles. The French fans absolutely loved him because he brought something special to their game. That playing style is super important to understanding why he says the things he does today. As a pundit for BBC Radio, Waddle has become famous for saying shocking things that get people talking. He judges modern players by comparing them to how he played the game. The problem is, his opinions can be really harsh, and not everyone appreciates his approach. His style has made him both loved and hated in equal measure. The most famous example of Waddle's controversial commentary came when David Beckham retired in 2013. While the entire football world was celebrating Beckham as an icon, Waddle decided to say something completely different. On BBC Radio, he claimed that Beckham wasn't even a great player. But he didn't stop there. Waddle went on to say that Beckham probably wouldn't make the top 1,000 Premier League players of all time. Yes, you heard that right. 1,000 players. This was about a man who won 6 Premier League titles, a Champions League trophy, and played for England 115 times. The statement shocked everyone who heard it. Waddle admitted that Beckham was a fantastic crosser of the ball and worked incredibly hard, but he said Beckham never had tricks and wasn't particularly quick. According to Waddle, these missing skills meant Beckham couldn't be called truly great. It was a view that ignored everything Beckham had achieved in his career. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Twitter exploded with angry fans defending Beckham. A poll showed that 75% of football fans in the UK thought Beckham was a top 50 player of the last 40 years, and nearly 1/3 put him in the top 10. That's a huge difference from what Waddle was saying. The numbers completely contradicted his opinion. Some people accused Waddle of being jealous of Beckham's fame. Others thought he was trying to stay relevant by saying outrageous things. Waddle has a very specific idea of what makes a player great, based on his own style of play. He values players who can dribble past opponents and do fancy tricks. Beckham didn't play that way. Instead, Beckham mastered crossing and set pieces. But Waddle couldn't see past his own narrow definition of talent. That number, 1,000 players, wasn't meant to be taken literally. It was just a way to shock people and get attention. It worked, but it showed how Waddle uses extreme statements to make headlines rather than having thoughtful discussions. So if you're enjoying this look at Waddle's wild takes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us what you think about the Beckham controversy. Was Waddle right to question his legacy, or did he go way too far? We want to hear your thoughts on this debate because it's still dividing fans today. Now let's talk about a more recent example. In the summer of 2025, Alexander Isak was trying to force a move from Newcastle to Liverpool. The transfer saga dragged on for weeks, creating tension between the player and the club. Waddle didn't hold back his criticism. He said he didn't like player power and thought Isak's behaviour was poor. He called the whole situation a shambles and embarrassing. He even said Newcastle were handling it like a pub team. Waddle clearly believed that players should respect their contracts. His old-school view is that clubs have authority and players need to honour their commitments. Many people today believe players should have more control over their careers. Thierry Henry suggested that clubs often do the same thing to players, pushing them out when it suits the team. But Waddle wasn't interested in that modern perspective. The interesting thing is that Waddle's concerns had some truth. Isak got his move to Liverpool for £125 million. But his start was rough. He missed pre-season because of the transfer drama, and that affected his performance. Alan Shearer said that missing pre-season was directly responsible for Isak's slow start. So Waddle was right that the messy situation hurt the player. But his harsh language rubbed people the wrong way. Waddle has also taken aim at players who came to the Premier League from other countries. Two of his favourite targets have been Jadon Sancho and Antony, both wingers who played for Manchester United. Sancho had been amazing in Germany with Borussia Dortmund, scoring goals and creating chances week after week, but he struggled when he moved to England. Waddle's explanation was simple and harsh. He said the pace of the Premier League didn't suit Sancho, and the league was too physical for him. He put Antony in the same category, saying both players couldn't cut it in England. His solution? Send them back to leagues that are slower and less physical. Waddle's belief is that the Premier League is the hardest league in the world, and not every talented player can handle it. He thinks the speed and strength required in England are unique, and success in other leagues doesn't mean you'll succeed in the Premier League. Looking at what happened to these players, Waddle's prediction came true in some ways. Sancho never found his form at Manchester United and went on loan to Chelsea and Aston Villa. He looked lost and confused on the pitch, a shadow of his former self. Antony also struggled and eventually moved to Real Betis in Spain. So both players left the Premier League, which supports Waddle's argument. But there's more to the story than just pace and power. Sancho's take on success rate was 55%, which is decent. Antony's was only 37.7%, which is really bad for a winger. That shows he struggled with the physical side. But Sancho's problems seemed different. His take on numbers were okay, but he only contributed to 0.37 goals or assists per 90 minutes. That's very low. Jamie Carragher pointed out that nobody could figure out what Sancho's best skill was. He was technically gifted, but couldn't turn that into consistent performances. So while Waddle was right that both players failed, his explanation was too simple. The real reasons included tactics, confidence, and decision-making. Manchester United's system didn't suit either player, and both seemed to lose belief in their own abilities as time went on. Another player Waddle went after was Viktor Gyökeres, the Swedish striker who Arsenal signed from Sporting Lisbon in 2025 for £64 million. Gyökeres had scored nearly 100 goals in 2 seasons in Portugal, which sounds incredible. Those numbers caught Arsenal's attention and convinced them to spend big money. But Waddle wasn't impressed at all. He said that any half-decent player should be scoring lots of goals for Sporting because the Portuguese league is so weak. He claimed that strikers should be getting at least 30 goals a season there because most of the teams are easy to beat. According to Waddle, facing Porto and Benfica are the only real challenges in that league. Waddle argued that Gyökeres wasn't a big upgrade for Arsenal and that his goal record didn't mean much because of the low quality of opposition he faced. This criticism shows another side of Waddle's philosophy. He doesn't trust statistics when they come from leagues he considers inferior. He thinks modern clubs rely too much on numbers and not enough on actually watching players compete against top opponents. Again, Waddle's harsh assessment had some truth. Reports came out that Gyökeres struggled in his early games for Arsenal and went through a goal drought. The goals that came so easily in Portugal just wouldn't come in England. Julian Lescott agreed that Gyökeres looked just okay and not good enough to win a league title, so Waddle's warning was fair. But his delivery was insulting. Saying any half-decent player would score that many goals dismisses what Gyökeres achieved. Even in a weaker league, scoring nearly 100 goals in 2 seasons requires talent and hard work. Waddle could have made his point without being so disrespectful, but that's not his style. He prefers to shock people rather than offering thoughtful analysis. This approach gets him attention, which is probably the whole point. So why does Chris Waddle say these things? Part of it comes from his own playing career. He was a creative winger who loved doing tricks and beating defenders. When he moved to France, he felt free to express himself. Then he came back to England and won Footballer of the Year, proving he could succeed in both styles. That experience gave him strong opinions about what makes a great player. He values flair and creativity. When he looks at modern players like Beckham, who succeeded through hard work and specialist skills rather than tricks, Waddle can't see them as truly great. His definition of greatness is narrow and personal. The other reason is simple. It keeps him relevant. To stand out, you need to say things that grab attention. Waddle has figured out that shocking statements generate headlines. When he said Beckham wasn't in the top 1,000 players, that was deliberately outrageous, and it worked perfectly. Some critics suggest Waddle's approach is about maintaining his own fame. There's probably some truth to that. But it's also true that Waddle does have real football knowledge. The problem is how he chooses to share it. Looking at all these examples together, a pattern emerges. Waddle has a very specific football philosophy. He believes the Premier League is the ultimate test of quality. He values individual skill and flair above everything else. He thinks players should be loyal to their clubs. And he's sceptical of statistics from weaker leagues. These beliefs aren't necessarily wrong, but Waddle presents them in the harshest possible way. He never seems to consider that he might be wrong about something. He makes extreme statements that divide opinion and generate controversy. This has made him one of the most talked about pundits in football, but not always for good reasons. The football legends we've discussed today, Beckham, Isak, Sancho, Antony, and Gyökeres, all found themselves targets of Waddle's brutal honesty. In some cases, like with Sancho and Antony, his predictions about their struggles turned out to be accurate. Both players left the Premier League without making the impact their clubs expected. In other cases, like with Beckham, his opinions were so extreme that they seemed designed more to shock than to analyse. Waddle represents an older view of football, one that values mavericks and individualists over systematic players. He's a voice from a different era, and he refuses to adapt his standards to the modern game. That makes him both interesting and frustrating. He offers a counterpoint to the hype and statistics that dominate today's football coverage, but he does it in a way that often feels unnecessarily harsh and attention-seeking. His views split opinion everywhere he goes. So what's the final verdict on Chris Waddle's punditry? He's not just an old player struggling to stay relevant, though. That's part of it. He's also not a complete fool whose opinions should be ignored. The truth is more complicated. Waddle has genuine football knowledge based on a great playing career. His eye for talent and understanding of the game's demands are real. He spent years at the highest level and knows what it takes to succeed. But his delivery is designed to provoke rather than educate. He uses shocking statements and extreme language to grab headlines and stay in the conversation. Sometimes his harsh assessments turn out to be right, which gives him credibility. Other times, like with the Beckham comments, he goes so far that he loses people's respect. In the end, Chris Waddle serves a purpose in football media. He forces people to think critically about players and question the hype. He reminds us that not every expensive signing will work out and that different leagues have different standards. His warnings about players from weaker leagues have often proven correct. He challenges the idea that statistics tell the whole story, but he could make these points without being so aggressive and dismissive. His unwillingness to show respect or consider other viewpoints makes him a controversial figure who's more interested in being talked about than being right. He seems to enjoy the controversy his comments create. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to catch more football content like this. We've got plenty more controversial takes coming your way. And let us know in the comments which of Waddle's takes you think was the most outrageous. Was he too harsh on these legends, or does football need more honest pundits like him? We'll see you in the next video.